I'll have all the answers today.
Hi, Tyler.
Hi, Dr. Lee.
That's fine. You got these?
Well, I put a Gary on the computer.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. You'll sign that over there. You'll be handling your I'm talking to him. Two things going on at the same time. How's the weather back up?
I think we just went on the beach.
Did you?
Yeah. But it is summer.
Yeah, it's supposed to be hot. So I know you haven't been watching in Australia.
I have seen it somewhat.
Have you?
Yeah, but it's 42 still.
Oh, 42
Word.
Celsius.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Whoa.
42
Quick
in,
conversion, 108.
That sounds about right.
42 in thunderstorms.
What's the dew point?
No, sure, I don't have that.
We're going to go ahead and get started. So our speaker this week is Tyler Royce from AccuWeather.
Thank you guys for having me. We'll start off quickly with the satellite. I'm going to dabble. I'm going to jump around a little bit. My role at AccuWeather has increased since the last time I've been here, and I dabble more in the long range aspect of forecasting, along with continuing European forecasting. And as I was talking to Bill, winter just doesn't suck here. It practically sucks everywhere across the mid-latitudes. For example, Moscow had a green Christmas, which is kind of very unheard of. I think it's the first one, in recorded history or something like that. And for this winter, they're running about 21 degrees above average. At one point earlier this month, they were about maybe 2 or 3 inches above us in snowfall total, just to go to show you how much close compared to what we were to them. The lack of snow, they were dealing with a lot of it, and they're finally getting some today that should significantly increase their snow cover. But going on with satellite, the sun finally broke through for the second straight day. I think that's a positive. You see all the low clouds in the Mississippi Valley and southern plains leading practically all the way up the Mississippi Valley. And then the clouds are essentially along the coastal region of the Carolinas. If I saw some Twitter pictures, there's some slight snow down in western Virginia going on today. If you go take a look, see what's going on. That was earlier in the day, but essentially where we have the low clouds, you're crapped out and you're either around freezing to below. 37 St. Louis, we go up to Chicago 35. Minneapolis 25 here. We broke now, so we get 34 here, and actually feels somewhat nice out in the sun. You go to Pittsburgh, it's only 33, so actually even warmer than they are. And I think at last point earlier, I think it was yesterday, Tuesday, saw that Lake Erie's only like 3% of ice coverage so far this winter, which is kind of crazy to think about. But let's go forward and see how things are going to progress. I know there's a lot of intrigue into what could be potentially happening this weekend, and we're going to take a look at the height anomalies at 500. So what I have here is I have GFS on the top left, the GEFS on the top right, and the European on the bottom left. I don't have this map back on for the European ensemble, so that would also be up. This little trough, this trough, digging trough in the four corners of Southern Plains is kind of the system that we're watching heading into the weekend. The player that's going to play a role probably next week is going to be this ridge in the northern bridge up in the Hudson Bay area as you go through. Notice is that we do have some kind of ridging, some high pressure over in Western Europe that's kind of dictating how things are going to go once you get onto that side of the Atlantic. As you go through, the ridge in the west, the axis just isn't right. It's very slanted coming up into the Pacific Northwest, which is continuing to funnel the constant storminess up there as they continue to get more rain and snow, mountain snow. As we progress through the weekend, that ridge does come into more of the Western Rockies, but what doesn't help is troughiness, or the trough that was over the four corners that progresses eastward. It doesn't really want to change. There's nothing to kick it to really go towards the negative phase. That's largely because of how the orientation of our ridge out in the west is. So the storm system that we'll see at the surface that's going to come up is going to go straight out to sea, and Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador are going to get another crazy snowstorm. Hopefully not the blizzard that dumps crazy amount of snow and leads to snowdrifts as high as houses again. But the mini ridge up in the Hudson Bay, as that comes across into the Atlantic, we could see finally some not a positive NAO pattern for once. Could actually lead to some kind of Atlantic ridge blocking situation going early into next week. When I did the long-range forecast yesterday, I was talking that all three of these are kind of somewhat into more of an agreement than they were yesterday, with the GFS and GEFS being more farther east across Western Europe. Is that the placement of this is going to be crucial if we want any winter storm to come up, because there's at least two more systems as we go through next week that I'll show you that have the potential, and it's really not the first one, it's going to be the second one as we go through. And the big reason why is we have to worry about what the pattern in the Atlantic is going to be through much of next week is a ridge to the west. It wants to head back into the Pacific. Looking at the 12Z runs, they've shifted the western ridge much farther west into the Gulf of Alaska around the 7th than they were yesterday at the 0Z run. And with that, I'm surprised this actually hasn't updated, because it's supposed to come in today, but the Europeans put out the, I find very fascinating, very useful, the weather regime frequency ensemble forecast. And he gives us an idea, it goes about a little over a month out in terms of what percentage of what the weather pattern is likely to be. And so the blocking aspect is really some kind of a European block, because it's geared towards that. But even if you get some of that and even an Atlantic ridge, you're going to kind of flip the pattern going on. The NAO pattern, though, is looking to dominate. The area of concern that I was referring to is really the 6th through 7th, 8th, and the models were showing the 9th was more of a transitional time. But this is the time where if we have some kind of high pressure in the northern and North Atlantic, that could be the key factor of any storm system coming across. Could really, instead of going out to sea off the East Coast, could potentially swing up. You allow the trough to kind of become a little bit more negative, tilted in that regard. But really, the positive NAO pattern is, according to this, could dominate through much of the month yet again. I know there's chatter on Twitter for Europeans that potentially with the AO, positive AO, and given how long that could run, it could be breaking close to record territory how long that phase has been positive. They keep sorts of stats like that over there because they're very winter salt for storms in that regard. So we'll go take a look at what we have, what's going to happen at the surface and whatnot. Very similar to what I had with the upper pattern. You have the GFS on the top left, the GEFS on the top right, the European deterministic on the bottom left, and the European ensembles on the bottom right. So we'll start off with what we have as of this afternoon. By the way, the European ensembles is 0Z still, so it kind of it's not the latest and greatest in regards to that. So they have high pressure over us. We'll finally start to erode as we go into Friday as our southern storm system, the storm system really starts to, that trough that we had in the four corners really starts to materialize the storm system in the southeast as we go through the weekend. And really, as it's going to be this close to bringing something to coastal areas like New Jersey and southern New England, I think this really is Cape Cod special. So unless you want to see snow, you gotta go to Cape Cod with that. But something we're going to have to watch is there's going to be a little clipper system that's going to come diving out of Canada through the Great Lakes Saturday, through us Saturday night into Sunday morning. That could bring probably light snow if we want to be really ambitious. And I haven't really looked an inch, maybe two, if we're really going to go wild with it. But there's a possibility that the blade does its job and all we see is another trace, half inch, to add to a measly snow total. But as we go through into early next week, what's going to happen is following this clipper system, it's going to warm up in the plains. They're going to go about somewhere between 10 and 15 degrees above normal. And then there's going to be another clipper system that's going to move across Canada, that's going to move across the northern plains, and a low pressure system is going to be a Pacific Northwest storm system that gets caught up onto it. It's going to come out along this front, and however far this cold front gets across the Ohio Valley and the Northeast will determine, do we see another slop fest go over to rain, or do we get to stay in the warm side the whole time? And that's something that we're going to see over the next, I'll say, week or so, is probably that battleground of where that front sets up. So as you go into the 4th and 5th, we have another storm system that's going right up the Ohio Valley along the front. And then what happens is that front stalls off the East Coast, and we're looking at potentially the 7th, 8th, somewhere between late of the 6th through the 8th, somewhere along there, a potential, saying that as in low confidence given how things have gone so far this year, of a winter storm in that regard. As I was even, any questions in regards to into that forecast? Alrighty, the one thing I will end with is, I don't know how many of you saw earlier this month that a record high pressure was set in the UK for many locations. They reached over around 1050 millibar high. As that was happening, a storm system got cut off and went into Spain, eastern Spain. Let me see if I can get this right here. And then it got cut up and stalled out and did some loop-de-loops across the Western Mediterranean and went back out into the Atlantic. But with that, you had a very tight pressure gradient. So you had strong winds along the eastern coast of Spain that led to, and I'm not kidding you here, 4-meter height waves. There were waves crashing over 2-story buildings. Within a 24-hour period, 80% of the citrus, mainly the oranges in Valencia, the state of Valencia in Spain, right along here, were lost. That's significant for them because their harvest period is coming up within a couple of months, and they just lost majority of their harvest in that regard. A lot of the higher terrain that occasionally see snow got several feet of snow out of this. So this was actually a very impactful storm in this regard, and there were, I want to say there's somewhere maybe up to 10 lives lost. Surprisingly, only that many, given that there was actually a basin. I think the Ebo River Basin in its delta, right where the cursor is, that actually flooded all the way up, right up, and just flooded all the way out. And there's actually a couple of cities within there completely flooded out. So that's how much rain fell. We were talking, some places saw 6-7 inches. And given the wind flow, and with the Pyrenees Mountains right here, very southern France here saw a foot of rain, or actually some places up to 14 inches of rain. And that led to a significant flooding in terms of that. And I'll end with this, is that there's been chatter a lot. So everyone got very excited about like a week ago that the polar vortex was finally going to do something. That it was, there's all these signs are pointing that it's finally going to happen. And as I'm showing you the 10 millibar heights and all that, and I'm no expert of this, so I'm just going to throw that out there. There is an event that does look like the model showing it's going to become displaced. It's not going to become split. It's not going to do any of the two crazy extremes. But what we saw within the last week or so is that what we thought was all going finally the cold is going to come in and last long really isn't. There's many factors that are leading us to say, hey, the impacts of this we're still very unsure about. Yes, we're going with the displacement of the polar vortex, but the reason a reason of pause, for instance, is the MJO is going to try to go back into and stay in its warm phases or its mild phases. So if you're looking for true prolonged cold here in the east, you're kind of going to be out of luck. What we're thinking with the long range team back in AccuWeather is that the core of the cold is mainly going to be really the northern Rockies and the northern plains, and then it's going to kind of seep. It's going to kind of bleed out. And we might get some of that, but it's not going to be any extreme cold that we've seen in years past for any period of time. So that's how I'll end the discussion today. Any questions at all?
Do you have a picture to go with that European model regime diagram? In other words, each one of those colors,
We should show
each one of those colors stands for a particular.
Yep.
Is there a picture that goes with like the red that shows what
The blocking pattern is, what the that's a very good question, and here we go. Let's see if we can get this to work. Here we go. So this here is your positive NAO pattern, your negative NAO pattern, your Atlantic Ridge, which is more or less the very northern North Atlantic towards Iceland, Greenland, and then your kind of European blocking is generally a Scandinavian type of a block.
Okay. So each one of those pictures corresponds to a color.
Yes.
So which one of those is red?
Red is
the one
the
that's called
blocking.
block.
This is the blocking.
Okay. Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you guys for having me today.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah.